tell you, the more you go through, the more God will use you. Grab your neighbor and tell him, neighbor, I want to be used because I recognize that what I'm enduring is only for a moment. For the Bible said these light afflictions that endureth for a moment, they worketh a far more and exceeding and eternal weight of glory. Look at your neighbor and tell him, payday is coming after a while. Ain't got but 5 more minutes. Throw your arm around your neighbor and tell him, I got news for you. You got to suffer some bitter things in your life. I come to tell you, if you never experience the bitter, you'll never get to what's better. Y'all ain't saying nothing to me. Give your neighbor a high five and tell him, neighbor, it's the bitter things that made me appreciate the sweet things. It was the dark days that made me appreciate the light. It was the sick days that made me appreciate the well days. It was the broke days that made me appreciate money. Give your neighbor a high five and tell him, I've been up and I've been down and I've been almost level. Should have preached a little while. I ain't got but 3 minutes. Throw your arm around your neighbor. Say, neighbor, everything bitter. Should I preach it here? Just got. I need somebody to jump up and preach it for me. Say, everything bitter just got better. Goodbye. Sit down for a minute. When you get up the next time, I'm on my way back to Brooklyn. Grab your neighbor and say, neighbor, Israel is now walking, amen, through the wilderness. 3 million people in a waste-barren wilderness. Their shoes didn't wear out. Their clothes didn't wear out. Their feet didn't swell. Y'all ain't gonna help me. Grab your neighbor and tell them, neighbor, when you go through with God, he always makes a way. Do I have a witness in the building? Grab your neighbor, say, neighbor, my God always makes a way. Somehow, I can't get no help in here. Grab your neighbor, say, somehow, I can't explain it. Somehow, I don't know how. Amen. But God always makes a way. Here, these 3 million people going through the wilderness. The Bible said they get to a place called Mara. Y'all ain't gonna say nothing. And when they got to Mara, they had just been through a season where they had no water. Grab your neighbor and say, neighbor, there comes a time in your life when you have no water. You lose your joy and lose your power and lose your passion. Have you ever been there? And then the Bible said they leave the place of no water and get to Mara. And at Mara there is water, but the problem is that the water is bitter. Y'all ain't gonna help me. I wonder tonight, is there anybody here that ever had to deal with bitter waters? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, life did me dirty and I had to deal with bitter water. Loved ones did me dirty and I had to deal with bitter waters. But the Bible said when they got there, where there was bitter water, Moses was the brunt of the people's argument. They murmured and they complained. They found fault with Moses and said, Moses, we were better off in Egypt. At least we had water. They cried and argued with Moses. But the Bible said in the 25th verse that Moses cried it unto the Lord. I ain't got no help here. Grab your neighbor, say, neighbor, if you're gonna cry, know who you're crying to. If you're gonna cry, I'm finished now. Grab your neighbor, say, if you're gonna cry, don't cry to folk that can't help you. If you're gonna weep, don't weep with folk that can't help you. Because my Bible says that weeping, I'm getting back on the bus. Throw your arm around your neighbor and say, weeping may endure for a night, but joy, oh Lord, I need about 50 folk to jump up on your feet and say, joy comes in the morning. Shout it out. Grab your neighbor around the neck and say, neighbor, I just want to encourage you. Your crying days, look at somebody and say, your crying days are over now. Your weeping days are over now. Get ready for the morning. Good day, good service, good God. Y'all ain't gonna say nothing. Should I preach? Throw your arm around your neighbor and say, neighbor. No, use your preaching voice and say, neighbor, stop by to tell you, stop crying, dry your eyes, stop crying, it just got better. Stop crying, God turned it around. Stop crying, because all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. Put your arm around your neighbor and say, neighbor, I just want you to know Moses cried. And when Moses cried, the Lord said, Moses, look over there. You'll see a tree. And the Bible said, Moses, y'all ain't gonna help me. Cut down the tree. I don't know if it was a maple tree, apple tree, peach tree, pear tree. Y'all ain't gonna help me. But when he cut it down, God told him, throw it in the water.